Thank you very much, Chairman Alexander. Thanks to all of our colleagues that are joining us today. Congressman Price, congratulations on your nomination, and thank you to your wife, Betty, who I know is here with you. You're well. But before I speak about this nominee, I do want to say that we remain deeply disappointed in last night where Democrats were blocked from asking more than one round of questions on Betsy DeVos, who's the nominee for Secretary of Education, and are disappointed that we are rushing this hearing as well. Mr. Chairman, you said 7 minutes, but I will just say I don't think any of us in prior nominees that you keep pointing to ever thought if I don't ask for another question, I have just set a precedent. In fact, I think that there is no example of any senator asking to do a question before and being turned down. So these nominees in a new administration that many people have questions about deserve to be asked questions, scrutinized in public before we have a choice to make on the floor of the United States Senate on both sides of the aisle in terms of whether we vote yes or no. That is why we think it's extremely important that we are allowed the opportunity to ask second rounds of questions after we have heard all of the questions. And today we have 3 or 4 committee hearings going on at the same time as this, so it is extremely challenging for our senators to be here on a nomination they care deeply about, on a subject that we care deeply about. So I would just like to point out again that several nominees that have come before, if we're going to talk about President, Secretary Leavitt, President George Bush's second HHS Secretary, 5 bipartisan senators participated in a second round. Senator Daschle, President nominee, Obama's first HHS Secretary, 3 bipartisan senators participated. And again, it is unprecedented for a chairman to turn down a member who has a question to ask. So for the record, I would just like to ask consent to put parts of the record of the nominees of Michael Leavitt, Andrew Van Oschenbeck, and Tom Daschle into the record of this hearing.
Oh, that'll be fine.
And again, our members have questions because this nominee is going to have jurisdiction over the health care and lives of millions of Americans, and we want to know where he stands before we make a decision, yes or no, on our imprimatur to him to be there. So that is why it is so important to members of our community. Now, having said that, I want to say this. The health of our families and communities could not be more important to our strength as a nation. When a young child goes to school healthy and ready to learn, she's better prepared to succeed. When women are empowered to plan their families and pursue all of their dreams, our communities benefit. When workers have access to quality health care that they can afford, our economy grows. And when seniors are able to trust that the guarantee of programs they have paid into, Medicare and Social Security, will be there when needed, we live up to some of our country's most vital responsibilities. The Department of Health and Human Services has a critical role to play in our ongoing work to meet each of these goals and many more. That is why in evaluating a nominee for Secretary of Health and Human Services, I consider whether the nominee has a record of putting people first, not politics, not partisanship, or those at the top, whether they will put science first, not ideology, and whether their vision for our health care in our country would help more families get quality, affordable care or take us backward. Congressman Price, I have serious concerns about your qualifications and plans for the department you hope to lead, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you today on a number of topics. I'll start by laying out issues with what your record suggests about your approach to our nation's health care system. Just last week, you voted to begin the process of ripping apart our health care system without any plan to replace it, despite independent studies showing that nearly 30 million people would lose health care coverage. Even though more and more members of your own party are expressing serious doubts about its ability to unify around a plan, and knowing that in a matter of weeks you could be leading the department whose core responsibility is to enhance America's health and well-being. My constituents are coming up to me with tears in their eyes, wondering what the future holds for their health care given the chaos Republican efforts could cause. President-elect Trump and Republican leaders have promised the American people their plans to dismantle our healthcare system right away would somehow do no harm and would not cause anyone to lose coverage. In fact, just days ago, President-elect Trump promised, quote, insurance for everybody. But Congressman Price, your own proposals would cause millions of people to lose coverage, force many people to pay more for their care, and leave people with pre-existing conditions vulnerable to insurance companies rejecting them or charging them more. So I will be very interested in hearing your explanation of how you have your plans to how we would keep the promises your party has made to the American people about their health care. Medicare is another issue I will be interested in hearing about today. President-elect Trump campaigned on promises to protect Medicare and Medicaid. You have said you plan to overhaul Medicare in the first 6 to 8 months of this administration in a way that would end the guarantee of full coverage that so many seniors and people with disabilities rely on. You have put forward policies that would shift $1 trillion in Medicaid costs to our states, squeezing their budgets and taking coverage away from struggling children and workers and families. And while President-elect Trump has said that Medicare should be able to negotiate lower drug prices for seniors, you have repeatedly opposed efforts to do that. You even went so far as to call legislation on that issue a solution in search of a problem. I disagree. This is absolutely critical for families in my home state, and I'm eager to hear how you would reduce the burden of prescription drug costs in our communities. As a woman, as a mother, and a grandmother, and a United States Senator, I am deeply troubled by the ways in which your policies would impact women's access to health care and their reproductive rights. I have serious concerns about your understanding of women's needs for basic health care like birth control, given your expressed doubts on this topic, your proposals to make women pay extra out of pocket for birth control, and your repeated efforts to defund our nation's largest provider of women's health care, Planned Parenthood. And I'm also very focused on the role of the Department of Health and Human Services in strengthening and protecting public health. So I want to hear from you about whether and how you would uphold the gold standard of FDA approval, and, for example, how you would approach important programs and rules intended to keep tobacco companies from luring children into addiction. Finally, as I discussed at our hearing yesterday, I believe firmly that especially as the President-elect tries to blur lines around conflicts of interest, it is critical we not only do everything in our power to hold him to high standards, but we do the same for cabinet nominees. That's why I was so appalled that with 4 of the President-elect's nominees currently serving in the House of Representatives, House Republicans attempted right out of the gate to get rid of the independent Office of Congressional Ethics. Now, luckily, they heard loud and clear from people across the country it wasn't acceptable, and they backed down. Congressman Price, the Office of Congressional Ethics has now been asked not only by Democrats, but by consumer advocacy group Public Citizen to investigate serious concerns and questions about your medical stock trades during your time in the House. I and other Democrats have repeatedly called for hearings on your nomination to be delayed until such an investigation is complete. It is disappointing to us that instead Republicans are moving forward with your nomination before we have all the facts. I hope you've come prepared to be fully transparent with us in your explanation. So I've outlined just a few of my questions and concerns about this nomination, and I know in light of Republican efforts to take our healthcare system in a vastly different and harmful direction that are shared by millions of people across the country who can't be here today. With that in mind, it's crucial that the voices of people who will be impacted every day by choices made under this administration are part of the process when it comes to the President-elect's cabinet nominees. So I just want to say I'm very pleased that tomorrow Senators Warren and Stabenow will be hosting a forum with witnesses who can speak to the impact of healthcare providers like Planned Parenthood, the importance of the work done in the Affordable Care Act to expand access to mental health care and substance abuse treatment, and the ways in which the full guarantee of Medicare has helped keep them financially and physically secure. There are stories across the country like this of lives saved and strengthened because of the progress we've made to expand quality, affordable health care. I urge my Republican colleagues to attend and to prioritize what is best for these women and men and families, not what's best for politics, as they consider each of the decisions in the coming weeks. Congressman Price, as we begin this hearing, I would ask you to be as transparent and frank as possible about your views and your plans for the department, and urge you to commit to providing us with additional information and answers to any follow-up questions we have in a timely and thorough manner. I'm looking forward to what I hope will be a rigorous and open discussion today, and I hope that we all arrive at the right decision for the families and the communities that we serve.